Okay, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amit Patel, and I'm the General Manager for application development, mobile application development. Joining me today on stage in about 15 minutes will be Pavel, who is the Senior Product Manager for Device Farm. We have a product announcement to make today, so that's going to be very interesting. Pavel's going to be making that announcement and walking through a demo for you as well. So you guys are going to be the first to see that. So before we get going, I thought I'd kind of ask a couple of questions from the audience. Just raise your hands. How many people here are working on mobile apps? Okay, pretty much a lot of you. And how many of you are familiar with the AWS Mobile Services? Okay, so not a lot. So hopefully this will be pitched right for you guys. This is an introductory session on mobile services. As I mentioned, we're going to be making an announcement on some new features, and there is a more in-depth look at one of our other announcements today, later on today, immediately after this session, in fact. And I'll give you some more details about that towards the end. Okay, so let's get going. So first of all, I wanted to start off with just a small look at the selection of customers that we have already running their apps on AWS. And there's a number of reasons customers are running their apps on AWS, and one of the big ones is scale. And I'll give you an example of one customer, Tinder. I guess most people are familiar with the app. These guys, since they launched, have generated 1.2 trillion swipes in their app using AWS, and that equates to something like 7 petabytes of transfers. So the scale, going from almost nothing to that scale has been easy for them because they built their app on top of the infrastructure that we provide. Another customer is Periscope. They're a video streaming company, and they engage their developers using Amazon SNS, which is a notification service, and they've been sending upwards of hundreds of millions of messages per day. So they send their customers hundreds of millions of messages per day. And a third customer is Etsy. Etsy's using our Device Farm service. People familiar with Device Farm? No. You'll hear more about it later. And this is testing on real devices in the cloud. And Etsy's essentially doing functional testing every hour. So they essentially test their app every hour to make sure it's working well. And they're also using that functional testing to monitor the end-to-end functionality of their service. So if they experience any service outages or so on, they'll be able to see that straight away. So, and all of these use cases and many, many others are done without worrying about the actual maintenance of the infrastructure, right? So they don't have to worry about devices. They don't have to worry about storage or servers or any of that stuff. They just use the services. Okay, so the way that we have kind of structured the services that we have for mobile developers is in 3 main blocks or categories. First one is develop, which allows developers to create the apps using accessing a range of different services. Testing, which we'll talk about on real devices before they launch, and even after they launch in terms of the operational cadence of running their apps. And finally, engage, which is what happens after you've launched. How do you engage your customers, make sure that you're able to track what they're doing and provide them with incentives to do more, essentially. So all of these areas are covered by one or more services that we offer. So why move forward with AWS? Why use these services? And the goal for us is to essentially eliminate that heavy lifting for everyone, right? So we are enabling you to build the apps the way you want to build them. Focus on the differentiation that you want to deliver to your customers, rather than worrying about all the back-end infrastructure and all the heavy lifting that goes with scaling your business. As your business grows, you want to think about adding more features, not necessarily about adding more servers. And that's really what we do. So we're gonna sort of dive a little bit deeper into each of these three areas. I'm going to talk more about how we help you develop. Pavel is going to come on after that and talk about testing, and then I'll finish up with the engage section. So here's a selection, and I don't know if you guys keep up with AWS services, but I think at the last count we were around 70 services and growing. Here is a selection of those services, some of the things that you can actually use and build your app on. And sort of, I want to focus on a few use cases. So the first one is user authentication, and for that we have a product called Cognito. Cognito enables you to essentially authenticate and store information about your users and manage those users. And there's a feature that was just announced today called user pools, which is going to improve that functionality even more. And as I said, we're going to have a session on that after this one. The other area is storage and retrieval of files and data. And for this, Amazon has a number of services, including S3 for file storage and DynamoDB for NoSQL, and also RDS for SQL, and actually Aurora as well, which is SQL-based. So there's a whole range of capabilities for storing and retrieving files and data. And then we also have analytics, which will allow you to examine and monitor user behavior and to track and retain those customers depending on how engaged they are. And finally, SNS, which is a service that allows you to notify your users through various means, engaging them via push notifications or SMS or email. So, I kind of touched briefly on some of the services, that by no means covering everything. We've also made it easier for everyone to actually use these services. So we have a couple of capabilities that we make available to mobile developers. The first one is the mobile SDKs. If you build an Android or an iOS app, or if you're using the Xamarin or Unity SDKs, we have the mobile SDK that allows you to build your app using any of those platforms. And you can choose the one that suits your app the best. In addition to that, we recently introduced Mobile Hub, which is a console. It's an integrated console. It enables developers to log in, and instead of just selecting services, it allows you to select the features that you want to build, and then it goes away and takes care of all the back-end generation of the environment and creating of sample code and so on, so that you don't have to spend kind of days setting up your different services. You can very quickly, based on the use case you want to do, set it up in the console and use the capabilities of the Mobile Hub. So just briefly on the Mobile Hub before we move on. So the first capability I talked about was it speeds up your development. And as I mentioned, if you want to, you can go in and pick individual services. So you can go in and say, okay, I want to build something for file storage, so I'll use S3. I want to do user authentication, so I will use Cognito. But each of those things requires you to set up an environment and to write the code using the APIs and so on. And what Mobile Hub does is through the screen that you see, this is one of the screens on the console, you can essentially pick the thing that you want to do. So if you want to pick user sign-in, you click on the user sign-in box. If you want data storage, you click on the data storage or analytics. You can see, and we are constantly adding more and more to these capabilities. So you'll be able to go in there and using this console very quickly set up an environment for whatever functionality or feature you want to build. And something that would typically take you a day or so to set up if you did it through all the different services would probably take you about 10 or 15 minutes using this console. So it's a very useful feature to get you running up and running very quickly. The other thing which is very useful about Mobile Hub is that it does create the starter code for you. So you don't have to again build the code from scratch using the SDKs and the manuals. You basically just generate the code in here. You can either use that as a template for your app, so you can just build it up from there, or you can decide that you want to cut and paste the snippets out of there and include it into your app. So these are just some of the capabilities included in the Mobile Hub service. Okay, so now I'm going to bring Pavel on board up here, and we're going to talk about testing your apps and how we've made it easy for developers to essentially test apps on different devices and different OSs. He's going to also announce the new feature that we've launched today, and I'll hand it over to him. Thanks.
Thanks, Amit. Which one?
Yeah, no. Forward.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pavel. Like Amit said, I'm a product manager for AWS Device Farm. Before we start talking about Device Farm, let's maybe stop for a second and talk about test itself. Why do you actually need to test your apps? Anyone who developed and deploy application to any of the app stores knows that first, it's a very competitive market, so you compete against other apps. And two, your end users actually have a very little patience for apps that either crash or perform badly, get stuck, and so on and so on. And since you are deploying your apps, or ultimately your apps are deployed on a variety of devices, both iOS and Android, different versions of Android, different manufacturers of these devices, modifications introduced by the carrier, and so on, it's very, very difficult to actually test these apps on the wide range of devices if you do not rely on some outside help. So, some of you may just buy devices, store them in cabinets and use them for manual testing. Other teams will build their own mini labs for automated regression and so on. Another approach may involve actually outsourcing all of the testing, either for manual or automated testing. And this is exactly why we built Device Farm, to address this problem. So Device Farm is a service that was launched in 2015. It's not even a year. It's not even a year old. And it essentially allows you to do automated testing of your apps on devices that we host in the cloud. Using Device Farm is very, very easy. So first you upload your APK or IPA file. Then you upload your tests, pick devices, define device configuration, hit start, and within minutes you will start seeing your test run on these devices, and you will start getting results back. These results will include performance data, logs, and so on and so on. I will cover this during a short demo later today. So today, Device Farm is available for both Android and iOS, and you can test both native, hybrid, and web apps with it. We have hundreds of unique device SKUs where we define a SKU as a combination of hardware and OS version. And of course, behind every single unique SKU, there are multiple instances of every device for capacity and redundancy reasons. Devices are isolated from each other, which is a very important from security standpoint. So there is really no crosstalk between devices that are used by different customers. And of course, we provide network and software separation as well. Another important feature of Device Farm is that it supports multiple test frameworks. So there are many technologies for writing tests. When we first launched, we focused on open source technologies like Appium, Calabash, as well as frameworks provided by both Google and Apple, for example, Express or XCTest for iOS. But you essentially have a choice of a tool set that is right for you, depending on your skills or depending on your need. And finally, Device Farm integrates with development environments and continuous integration environments like Jenkins, for instance, right? So we have a Jenkins plugin that allows you quickly start running your Jenkins tests on every build on Device Farm devices. And today we are extending these automated capabilities with remote access, which I'm really excited to announce in beta for Android. And remote access essentially allows you to pick a device and then interact with this device through your browser, do swipes, gestures, and other manual interactions. So you can do more exploratory testing, you can do more manual testing, you can do debugging of problems in your apps, and debugging problems in your scripts. So with this new capability, Device Farm addresses both automated testing, as more and more companies adopt it, as well as manual testing that is still very prevalent and unavoidable in many situations. And with that, I'm going to jump to a quick demo. Yeah, the network isn't the best here. All right. So before we jump into this stuff, I am going to show you first the new feature, remote access, how you get started with it. So when you're go to AWS device farm in a console, the first thing you'll see is a list of your projects. You already have a few projects. If there was no projects created here, you would see essentially a pop-up asking you to create your first project. I'm going to jump into AWS Chicago Summit project that I created just before this session, and you can see that in the project there are two options. There are two options here. The first one is automated tests, and the second one is remote access. Okay. If I go to remote access, I can hit start. I think I need to re-authenticate. Just give me 1 second, please. Oh, okay. My apologies for this. It seems that connection was. All right, I think we're back online. So yeah, when I go to remote access, I can create a new session right here by clicking start a new session. And the first thing that I'll see is a list of devices that I can choose from, right? And you can filter in order to find a device that you need. I'm going to go for Samsung Galaxy S3 Mini. Once I select this, then it's as simple as hitting confirm and start session button. And we are now waiting for the device. I already have a device allocated, or maybe not. Let me see. So if I go back to remote access, so this is actually a session that I had earlier that is now finished. So now we are waiting for the second session. And while we wait for a device to be prepared for us, I'm going to show you the automated feature of the service that was available before. So going back to the project. So this device is now being set up. That means that we're doing a pre-session cleanup of a device, which is going to take about 2 or 3 minutes. So while we wait, let's go to the automation feature so you will get an idea how you can schedule your automated tests with device farm. So when we're on the automated tests tab, you can hit create a new run button in order to schedule your automated run, which I talked about before. So first thing that you'll have to decide is whether you're testing your native app or your web application that runs in a browser. I have a sample native app, and that's what I'm going to use. And now, once you selected that, you can upload either your Android APK file or iOS IPA file, and we'll automatically detect will automatically detect type of the application. I selected IMDb app, which is more or less internal app to Amazon. And we have some sample tests for this app that will run. So, yeah, the connection is not very fast, so the upload takes a while. And once this file is uploaded, it hits our internal S3 bucket. We'll analyze the file. We'll pull some data from manifest that you'll see in a second. And we'll use this data to guide the next steps of the execution wizard here. One additional thing that you can do here is you can name your run in a unique way if you want. But again, once the upload is completed, we're going to populate this field automatically after the name of the application. Almost there. All right. So now the application is being processed. We're analyzing the manifest, and Here we go. So the package name is com.imdb.mobile. We found activity, the launch activity. We found minimum SDK, which will be important when we go to the device selection. And now when I go to next step, then I can pick the test that I would like to run. Like I said, device farm is very flexible. There's a number of test frameworks that you can choose from. Things like Appium and Calabash for cross-platform testing, or instrumentation on UAutomator, which are Android only. Different frameworks have their own applications. It's important to have a choice of different tools for different types of tests. Today I'm going to show you Calabash tests. So I'm going to upload a Calabash zip that just contains some Calabash scenarios. Calabash is a behavior-driven framework, so you define your tests essentially as user behaviors, which is pretty nice if you're just getting started with automation, because it almost requires no coding to get started. You express test cases in a human language. So with my features file uploaded, the next step is device selection. Unlike for the remote access, where you can, of course, pick only a single device to interact with it remotely, here you can select multiple devices. By default, we are selecting top devices pool that has 5 different SKUs. But I can create any pool. For instance, I can say, hey, I would like a pool with Samsung devices. And here I can filter Samsung. Oops. Select all. And the pool will be created. And now we can see that there are 76 devices in the pool, which is pretty much all of the Samsung devices that are available in device farm. Just to save time on execution, I'm going to go back to top devices, just so we run just on 5. But like I said, and like you'd see, there is lots of unique SKUs available in our fleet. And the penultimate screen of the test scheduling wizard is defining device state. So we allow you to do things like changing device location, so your application can be tested for different geolocations. You can change device locale, and you can also upload some extra data or pre-install additional applications on a device. So sometimes if you test an app, it may require either data put on an SD card, or it may require a third-party application pre-installed on a device, and you can accomplish this by using these settings over here. And I'm not going to change anything here for this demo. And finally, I'm going to say confirm and start run. You can see this little checkbox here, use my foreign meter Android devices, and this is actually related to billing. With device farm, there is 2 ways of paying for the service. One is very flexible when you just pay per minute. You pay just for what you use. But you can also opt in to buy something called device slots that allow you unlimited access at a specified concurrency. So since I have 4 device slots on this account, they come at a flat monthly price. And I can run unlimited tests at a flat monthly price, but my test will be executed on up to 4 devices in parallel. So it's essentially capacity and scaling that drives the monthly cost. So I'm going to use my Meter Android devices here, confirm and start run, and this run is now running. Okay. So while this guy is running, or it was actually put in a queue, our scheduler is looking for devices. It already found 3 of them, and it will find the 4th one momentarily, and as soon as it finds it, it will start running it. While the automated test is running, let's go back and let's see whether our remote device is ready. So if I go to remote access here, and I click on this, now, as you can see, the waiting screen is gone, and I can see a screen of a device that I selected, Samsung Galaxy S3 Mini. And you can simply use, I can simply use a touchpad in order to navigate through a device. So swipes will work across the screen. I can launch any application I want here, for example, email. If I didn't want to launch it, you can use these buttons here to navigate, so I can go, hey, go back home. And of course, in addition to a device itself, we'll give you also an ability to upload your applications that you would like to test. And the process is very, very similar to what you saw in automated testing. So you simply navigate to the APK file, you select it. Now we're uploading the file. And once it's uploaded, it will be processed and installed on a device, and we should see the IMDb application here shortly. any manual interaction here that you would normally do on a phone is possible, and this is a great way to run either manual test cases, reproduce customer issues, and okay, now it's uploading, and do more exploratory testing as a complementary service to the automation. So now it's being installed. So we should see IMDb being added to the list here shortly. Let me actually swipe and wait. And there we go. I believe that something was just added. Yes, there we go. So here's IMDb. I can launch it. I can go home. I can, run the search. By clicking here on a search box, you can see that the device keyboard comes up. I can type, for example, the name of the movie, I don't know, John Carter, for instance. Hit search. And you can see search results and so on. So, of course, you can do any interaction you would do when testing the app locally on your own device. So let's go back real quick to the automation now. Sorry about alternating, but these things are related. As you could see, I installed the IMDb application, and I played with this here by looking for John Carter. And as a matter of fact, the automated tests that I uploaded, this is one of the scenarios that I have in there as well. So if I go back to my runs, you can see that this test is still running. It gets skipped on one device, and we'll talk about it in a second. But I scheduled the exactly same run earlier this morning. So let's look at the results that were already completed. So this is a report for our automated testing service, where you can see first high-level pass failures at the very top, then unique issues that we found in these tests, and then break down device by device if you'd like to do a deep dive, right? So first, let's see what's going on with Samsung Galaxy S6 Verizon. Why did it error? So striped red in our reports means errors. Solid red means failures, and failures is something that we can say for sure that, hey, yes, your test failed. Errors is something that may be attributed to an infrastructure problem or to a script issue, framework, or tooling problem, and so on. So when I drill down into this issue, you'll see that here is a list of test suites that were run on this device, and pretty much all of them got skipped. And just below that, I can see a detailed log. It would be even more detailed if I remove this filter. I'm not going to do this right now. But one of the first things that you can see here in the logs is that package.com.imdb.mobile is already installed as a default system app. And this is why device from couldn't install the version of the APK that I uploaded on top of the system app, because we couldn't simply remove the system app from a device before that. Now, if this was a real IMDb team testing IMDb app, they would simply rename this app to something else. They would change the package name, and they would be able to install it alongside the system app. But in this example, you can see what happens if you're actually trying to override a system application. So apparently, Samsung Galaxy S6 for Verizon is the only device on this list that actually comes with IMDb pre-installed, since tests ran just fine on the other 4 devices. And now, if I go, if you look here, there is a single failure on every single device. You can see 4 failures here, but we run an analysis of failures that we find in the test logs, and we try to group them so it's easier for customers to for customers to actually identify unique problems. So based on these logs, we determined that this is actually one and the same failure that just happened across 4 devices. And most likely, it doesn't matter which one I click on in order to debug this more, because it's going to be the same. And once I eliminate it, these tests should start to pass. So let's go back. So let's go to Samsung Galaxy S5 for T-Mobile here. So now I am 3 levels deep. As you can see, I'm looking at the logs for an individual test on Galaxy S5 T-Mobile, test suite movie search. I'm going to search for a movie. And here is the high-level logs that you can see for every single test. And like I said, Calabash is a framework that allows you to write tests in a human-readable language using BDD approach. And here in the logs is exactly, you will see exactly that. Those are the steps that were written by developer of the script. Given that I see text in theaters, then I want to grab a screenshot. Then I want to press on the home button. Then I want to press on the view with ID search. Then I want to type John Carter into search. And then I want to make sure that John Carter actually shows up, but actually not really, because if you can see, the script is typing in John Carter in the search box, but it's actually waiting for Star Wars. And this is why this particular test is failing. So of course it was made to fail on purpose, but this, if this was a real failure, you would see it reported in the same way, right? There was a mention of screenshots here in this report. So here are the screenshots that were collected during this test. And you can see the sequence, going to home, setting focus to the search box, typing John Carter, and then search results that clearly have John Carter, but again, our script was made to wait for Star Wars instead. In addition to logs and screenshots, we also capture performance data. So you can see CPU usage, memory usage, and thread count for each and every test, but you can also look at this from a device perspective, and I'll show you this to you in a second. And then there's a number of files, additional artifacts that you might want to look at, especially if you're doing any programmatic analysis of the results. So for example, you can see that Calabash, one of the outputs that we retrieve from Calabash is a JUnit XML, which may be very, very useful if you're doing post-processing of these results on your end. Needless to say that everything that I showed you here in the console is available via the public API. So we use no private APIs here. As a matter of fact, console exposes more data. API exposes more data than the console. And of course, our API, just like any other AWS service, you can access it using AWS SDK or AWS CLI. So it can be, Deviceform can be used for very powerful integrations if you want to build like a dashboard style, quality or health check of your app, and you run your tests on Deviceform. You can easily do this using our API. And some of the other files that are available for download here via the API is the full video capture of a test. So I can actually download this. And we can see, okay. And let's watch this. There's like a setup that happens first. And now we're launching IMDb. We're going to home. I'm going to type in John Carter here in search. Going to search results, and the test will fail momentarily because, again, the script was written in a way that it expects a different text. Now, if this was a real failure, then the remote access that we just announced would come in real handy, right? Because, again, we have a device session right here. The same device, same application that just uploaded, and you can manually walk through the same scenario to see actually, is it a bug in the app? Is it a bug in a script? Or something else, right? So this can be a very, very helpful, not just for pure manual testing, but also for debugging of issues in the apps, debugging of issues in the scripts, and debugging of issues that come from customers. And now, when I stop this session, and I'm going to stop this session right now, what's going to happen is that we're going to run device cleanup, and the full logs from this session will be added to the sessions list here. So if I go back to projects again, here is, by the way, the IMDb run that I scheduled almost done, and we're expecting same results. Like I said, I was using unmetered device slots and I have 4 of them, so that's why you can see that 4 of the tests are already done, and this is the one remaining device that is still going. Like I also said, the results start coming back as soon as tests on individual devices complete, so you don't really have to wait until everything is done. I can jump right into, for example, this guy, which is, again, the same failed test, this time on an Amazon tablet, and you can start analyzing the results. And now if I go back again to not this guy, but let me go back to all projects, to this guy. So this guy is still running, and now remote access, the top session is still cleaning up, and results are being retrieved. But this is the session that I completed earlier, and you can see a full logs from this session right here, and files, including video and logcat. Nothing was really happening. It was sitting there idle, so there's nothing interesting in the video. But speaking of logs, before we wrap up the demo part, we were looking just at the high-level logs right here. But as a matter of fact, this view contains not just the high-level harness logs, but also detailed framework debug logs, as well as device logs, logcat for Android, device syslog for iOS. And you can use this to correlate pieces of logs that come from different sources. You can look things up by, for example, PID, so 178. I mean, there is some process on this device that keeps failing, keeps erroring, likely one of the system services, but you can search for information for these logs, using this view very easily. You can use wildcards, for example. I can do IMDb. There was really no IMDb app installed in that session, so that's why I see nothing. However, if I go back, assuming that the other one is done, remote access, yes, the other one is done. And if I look for IMDb right here, star IMDb, you can see that there's lots of entries. So this would be something that might be very helpful to a developer who is working on that app, because those are the log messages that he's writing to logcat. So that's device farm. Now not just automated, but also manual with our remote access feature. Like I said, this will be we are launching this right now. This will be available publicly later today. It's public beta for Android. iOS is coming later this year. That's it, folks. If you guys have any questions, I understand that I went over quite a lot of material here. We don't have a formal Q&A in the end, but I'm going to hang around here if you guys want to chat more.
Yeah, thanks, Pavel. Okay, so that's the exciting news for this session. At least there's some more, as I said, in the next session. So please hang around for that. So I want to kind of wrap up this particular session with the third area of focus for AWS Mobile and AWS Mobile Services, and that's around Engage. We have a number of services in this category for tracking the usage of your app and engaging with your customers through either push notifications, SMS, or emails in order to drive drive your usage, drive your revenue, whatever the goal of your app may be in terms of your business model. So we'll start first of all with one of the services that's available today. It's Amazon Mobile Analytics, and Mobile Analytics essentially enables you to drive retention and to drive in-app behavior through events. You can also measure a number of things such as new versus returning customers, and you can use all of the data that it produces to essentially drive your business through sort of data-driven decision making, and that's really what analytics is about. Now, a few things worth noting about analytics. First of all, it's fast. So if if the metrics that are generated on a user's device are typically available for analysis within 60 minutes of that event happening. It's also scalable. So we've we've seen users and customers who can scale to billions of events per day, from millions of individual customers and end users. And finally, the last point, which is important, is that the data is not aggregated or, in other words, reused. The data belongs to you, and you can analyze it in whatever way you choose to analyze it. So these are the benefits of this service. And just wanted to show you kind of a quick dashboard picture of this. And one of the key things about this service is also that it's really easy to use. So we have 9 predefined metrics which we make available. Of course, you can define your own, but these are the 9 that we have. And with a single line of code, you're able to essentially set this up and start collecting data and metrics and start analyzing that data. So everything from active users, the number of sessions, lifetime value, for example, or retention, and much more is available with a single line of code. So definitely something that can be valuable in terms of making sure that your customers, what your customers are doing with your app is something that you can use and leverage for improvements and also benefit to your customers. I'm going to just dive a little bit deeper into one or two of these things. So first of all, in terms of sessions, I mentioned sessions just a second ago. With that, you can track how often your app is used on a given day, right? So individual sessions, a customer comes in, maybe does something in the morning, does something in the afternoon, does something in the evening, and just understanding the patterns of behavior with your app from an individual customer. So this kind of analysis, again, helps you to understand where you should be, what things you should focus on in order to improve your app, and how you can drive even more engagement on your app itself. The other interesting one is retention. So here you can measure the rate at which customers come back to your app, either on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or whatever period makes sense after the first use. So how many times did a customer use your app and then never come back? Or how often does he come back? How many sessions does he run? All of this analysis really helps you to understand where there are potential problems in your app, where there are potential problems in the acceleration of usage of your app, or why you're having issues driving revenue and so on. So this is a very useful, powerful capability, which is fairly easy to integrate into your app. Once you actually have that data, you want to be able to take some actions based on it. Some of it will be improving the capabilities of your app or the way that your app interacts with the end user and so on. Other actions you could take is actually to proactively drive engagement. And here we have the Amazon SNS service, or Simple Notification Service. The notification service enables you to get messages to your user in different ways. So first of all, you can use push messaging via the mobile app itself, or you could use SMS to mobile phones if that's something you find useful to do, and then also directly to HTTP endpoints. So there's different ways, flexible ways of getting messages to all the users globally. So these two services used together will enable you also to do, to target customers and make sure that you're delivering relevant messages, not just, mass mailing or could be considered spam essentially, but, just focusing and making sure that you're delivering the right messages to your customers based on their usage and what they're doing. So these are some of the different use cases for this service. And as I said earlier, as with many, in fact, all of the services that we have, scale and kind of taking care of the infrastructure as your business grows is something that you don't need to worry about, because as you grow your business and as the number of messages or the number of events from your devices and your customers come in, as that grows, we are able to grow with that and support your business. So it's essentially scalable to the point at which you need it without you having to worry about the how or the infrastructure itself. Okay, so that was essentially the the overview that I wanted to provide in this session. I think the key takeaways from here is that you can build your app without worrying about the infrastructure. You can use Mobile Hub to make it even easier to build your app. I talked about the cut and paste features, using the templates and the samples that we provide in order to actually build your app from scratch. And all the setup of different services like S3 and Dynamo and so on. Again, you don't have to spend days and days setting all of that up. A lot of those kind of common capabilities are things that can be handled in Mobile Hub directly. The other aspect of this is test. We talked about, and Pavel did a pretty extensive demo on that. We've already had automated out there for over a year, or just under a year actually, and the mobile remote access is available as of today. So this, the capabilities, and again, this is about not just about managing the infrastructure, but also about enabling you to have some sort of continuous integration. We have a very rich set of APIs on all of the services, including Device Farm, where you can essentially build a continuous integration pipeline and not have to worry about having to do manual testing every time you do a new build, but rather, if you want to do some exploratory testing, you use manual. If you want to debug something that you found through the automated testings, you use manual. But it's a combination of automated and manual, and the automated stuff is made even more powerful with the APIs. So it's testing on real devices in the cloud. And then finally, we just talked about the engage. So here, it's about monetization, it's about usage, and how you can maximize that for your app. So before we kind of let you guys go, I wanted to just make one more pitch for the next presentation. So we have in the next slot here in this room, Cognito Identity User Pools being announced. Actually, it was announced earlier, but we're going to go through it in much more detail. A few things that I want to highlight, and I'm sure the next speaker will cover this in more detail. So with this new capability now, you're able to add sign in and sign up for all your mobile apps. You're able to do managed user directories for hundreds of millions of users. So essentially, again, this is a scale story. So as you scale, you'll be able to manage the user directory for as many customers as you can onboard. And of course, it's secure, so it supports things like multi-factor authentication. So more on that in the next session, and more details to come on that. With that, this is the end of the presentation. If you guys have questions, Pavel and I will be hanging around, and we'll be happy to go through those with you. Thank you.